Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Tuning in to the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting stories in these trying times. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my voice. I am suffering from laryngitis, but I promise you can't catch that through the microphone. So let's get to our first story. A dad from Jersey has gone viral after he was sharing his daughter's reaction to his newly designed adaptive Nintendo Switch controller, which he created specifically to work alongside her disability. Ava Steele, his 9-year-old daughter, has a hereditary spastic paraplegia, meaning that her motor functions and speech are affected. And her symptoms make it particularly difficult for her to play video games the way that most people do. But her father, Rory Steele, has made it so that she can play alongside her friends. Steele is a self-admitted tinkerer, and he designed a custom arcade-style Nintendo controller that can hook up to an adaptive Microsoft Xbox controller. With his dual joysticks and multiple easily accessible buttons, he bought all the parts for his contraption off of eBay for less than $150. So not only is this product incredible, but it's also affordable. He later posted an adorable Twitter video that I really recommend that everybody watch of his daughter playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And she's playing it with perfect ease. And it's been viewed by over 1 million different viewers. What Ava said about the video is that she said that she made her father famous, and she asked where her cut was. I just loved that. Ava's 5-year-old brother, Corbin, who suffers from the same condition, was also involved in the creation and aided his father in this. He said that Ava had actually stolen the limelight, but the younger sibling was straight in afterwards and played The Legend of Zelda himself. It even got some feedback from Bryce Johnson, the founder of Microsoft's Inclusive Tech Lab, an inventor of the adaptive Xbox controller used in Steele's device. Bryce said on Twitter, "The plan sounds good. You can also bring 8 buttons with each USB port. I'm assuming those boards will let you plug in buttons. Let me know if you have any questions." So this is reaching some extreme levels of innovation and really getting attention of people that are leading the way in these innovations. Although Steele says that the controller's final design is an ongoing effort, he soon plans to post DIY instructions for its assembly on the internet so that other parents of disabled children can build one themselves. So, if you are someone that's looking to create these things for your own child, or maybe somebody that you know that suffers from these conditions, then he's got a solution for you. And you'll be able to make it with the help of his instructions. I think this is a really important step for a number of reasons. I never played video games as a child, but I do feel like I missed out on a lot not doing that, and I'm completely capable, and I have the abilities to use the regular controllers. I'm not saying that I have the proper hand-eye coordination. I really don't think that I do. But I always felt like I was missing out on something not playing. And I could have picked it up at any time. But feeling like you're missing out on these things because you physically can't must be absolutely heartbreaking. And this is a way that children connect nowadays. You know, when I was younger, like, we used to go outside into the park and we would play on the park. But one thing that we're not thinking about is that peoples with different abilities aren't able to do that sort of play. So when people always complain and say that children, you know, they don't play outside like they used to, or they don't do this like they used to, some video games and these gaming systems and things, they do enable children to play that if they aren't physically capable of playing, they wouldn't be able to explore and create in that way. Video games have all kinds of engagement and life lessons that maybe we don't understand because we weren't raised on them per se. But I really think that this is like a very important step in innovation for children with disabilities. You know, they really are, like, video games really are a way of young people connecting and playing with one another, you know, especially when running and jumping and traditional exercising are made difficult by their other inhibitions. I, for one, applaud this dad for creating a way to help his daughter play alongside her friends and his son, and helping pave way, like, for innovations like this in the future. I also love the idea of the dad and the son kind of creating these things together and finding these little parts on eBay and figuring out how things work and tinkering together. Even that is like a form of play, you know, and a form of, like, exciting. Like, I know a lot of people that build computers in their off time, and that's how they choose to spend their time. Yeah, I really loved this story. I really thought it was a sweet way of bringing together this sense of play and different abilities. So I would like to hear your thoughts on it and hear your thoughts on the importance of video games in today's youth, and whether you think that this is an important innovation or not. I would also like to hear from the gamers. I'd really like to hear from the gamers and what it's meant for you to have this as part of your world, because this is something I never experienced, never really made a part of my life. And I can't speak too much to the importance of it. So I would really like to hear, would really, really like to hear what your thoughts on that are. So when we return, we are going to be talking about some other medical related news to reverse arthritis.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
we talked about a man who altered traditional video controllers to aid his daughter to play video games despite her medical condition. And now we're going to talk about another innovation in the medical community. Now, bear with me. There's going to be a lot of medical jargon in here, but I do think that it's worth it, because if you suffer from arthritis, or you know someone who does, you know how difficult it can be to adjust to this new mobility and how hopeless at times that it can seem. However, there may be this new innovation that can reverse the effects of arthritis and the symptoms of arthritis. People with osteoarthritis, wear and tear arthritis, have had, in the past, limited treatment options, either pain relievers or joint replacement surgery. Well, according to the Salk Institute, researchers have discovered that a powerful combination of two experimental treatments reverses the cellular and molecular signs of osteoarthritis in rats, as well as isolated human cartilage cells. The results were published in the journal Protein and Cell earlier this week. According to Juan Carlos Ibesu Belmonte, a lead author and professor in Salk's Gene Expression Laboratory, what's really exciting is that this is potentially a therapy that can be translated into the clinic quite easily. We're excited to continue refining this promising combination of therapy for human use. Now, 30 million adults in the United States are affected by osteoarthritis. It's the most common disorder in the States, and its prevalence is expected to rise in oncoming years due to the aging population and increasing rate of obesity. The disease is caused by changes to the cartilage. Cartilage, of course, that cushions bones and joints. And during aging and repetitive stress, molecules and genes in the cells of the articular cartilage change, eventually leading to the breakdown of cartilage and the overgrowth of underlying bone, causing chronic pain and stiffness. This pain and stiffness can be absolutely inhibiting, and it can ruin your day-to-day life unless you learn to adapt and evolve and change. But you might not have to do this adapting and changing of your lifestyle due to this new research. Previously, research had pinpointed two different molecules that support the surrounding articular cartilage cells to keep the extracellular matrix from degrading, as well as the other cell that would stimulate the proliferation, preventing the breakdown. Now, each alone had only moderately curbed osteoarthritis in animals. However, Ibisu Belmonte and his colleagues wondered if the two together would more effectively work together. We thought that by mixing these two molecules, it would work in different ways, and maybe we could make something better. The researchers treated young rats with osteoarthritis using viral particles containing the mashup of these two proteins. 6 weeks after the treatment, the ones who had more severe osteoarthritis but have not received the treatment progressed from stage 2 to stage 4. It got infinitely worse. However, the rats that had received the particles showed recovery in their cartilage. Their cartilage was thicker, fewer of their cells were dying, and actively proliferating cells were present. And these animals' disease moved from stage 2 down to stage 1, a very mild form of osteoarthritis, and no negative side effects were observed. From the very first time we tested this combination, we saw huge improvement, says Isabelle Guyan, the paper's first co-author. We kept checking more animals, seeing the same encouraging results. So, it works on rats, right? So they had to test it on humans after that. Now, to test the applicability of this on humans, they isolated some human articular cartilage cells, and they treated them with this combination. Levels of molecules involved in cell proliferation, extracellular matrix formation, and cartilage cell identity all increased. The research team plans to develop the treatment further, including investigating whether soluble molecules of these proteins can be taken directly rather than administered through viral particles. They also will study whether the combination might prevent the development of osteoarthritis before the symptoms even develop. Now, I know several people with suffering from arthritis, and I do see how painful it is and how awful it must be to have to change your lifestyle to incorporate this new form of mobility. But if you can do it, if you can solve this before even having to make these innovations, that would be absolutely incredible. And if you were listening to the statistics before, if this innovation by Salk is correct, this could improve the lives of millions of Americans and beyond. I, for one, think that that's pretty beautiful. Now, when we return, we're going to be talking about a woman who was reunited with her father because of algorithms. Yes, algorithms created by a certain very innovative form of social media that was created, you guessed it, here in America. Yeah. So that's going to be on when we return.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Improving the lives of millions of Americans affected by arthritis. Now, we talk about a beautiful reunion between father and daughter. Now, when I read this story, I just was absolutely floored by this and how the only way it was possible was through the use of modern technology, and I hope you guys like it as well. A woman has been reunited with her long-lost father after 56 years apart. And it's all because he was suggested as a friend on Facebook. Yeah. Can you even imagine that? 56-year-old Karen Harris was adopted as a little girl in the early 60s after she was born out of wedlock by her teenage birth parents. When she turned 18, Harris approached an adoption agency seeking to track down her birth parents. She knew virtually nothing about her biological father, but a social worker shared with her the details that she could, and Harris managed actually to find her own mother 10 years later, after she'd had a child of her own. However, finding her father proved to be a little bit more difficult. All she knew was that he was an electrician from Croydon, which is a bit of London, in case you don't know. His name was Trevor Sinden, but without that much information, she failed to track him down until decades later, when she saw the name appear on suggested friends. Harris, who lived in Cornwall, saw that he lived 350 miles away in Kent. And upon scanning his online profile, she realized it might actually be her father. The pair then chatted for several weeks before meeting up for the first time in a very emotional reunion, and they both said it was like they've known each other their whole lives. It's so surreal. The chances of actually meeting were so slim, said 72-year-old Sinden. I've looked on the internet, but I could never find her. It's early days now, but I feel like we already know each other quite well. If it wasn't for Facebook, we wouldn't have met. The reunited father and daughter decided to meet in Lyme Regis, Dorset, roughly halfway between Cornwall and Kent. And when they first spotted each other, they hugged each other for so long that a passerby said, "I hope you know each other." They had a lot of catching up to do in the following days, which were spent going for long walks, searching for fossils in the Jurassic Coast, and Harris was also introduced to two of her long-lost cousins. She had an amazing time and made many new memories. Looking at your family that brought you up, you're really grateful that they brought you up, but you don't have that sense of belonging, said Harris. Now, I've found completion. I've found connection and completion, and I'm cherishing it. Those who are adopted can understand that moment when you first see someone other than yourself in a mirror that has your cheekbones, your eyes, your chin. It's something that someone who wasn't adopted probably can't relate to or understand, but it changes the way that you look at the world. Now there's someone else like me, loving me for me, and I cherish every moment. I'm incredibly blessed to find it now. Those are words from Harris. I really liked this story. I really liked seeing Facebook being used for good, because so often we've been hearing news about Facebook being horrible and stealing data and this and that, but this was a very beautiful and uplifting story that made me very, very happy to hear. I think that Facebook being used to reunite a family is pretty beautiful to me. So when we return, an honest man returns money he found in a used couch to its rightful owner in a reunion of a slightly different sort when we return.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
We talked about a reunion between a father and daughter, and now another reunion of sorts. A Michigan man has proven that honesty is in fact the best policy. After he compassionately and happily returned thousands of dollars in cash that he found inside a recently purchased second-hand couch. Howard Kirby bought the couch from the Habitat for Humanity store last month so that he could use it at home in his man cave. But after lounging on it for several weeks, he found it a little bit uncomfortable. This is a true Princess and the Pea story that turns out extremely well. So his daughter ended up unzipping the couch cushions in hopes of, improving it. Maybe that she would restuff it, that kind of thing. But inside, they were shocked to find hundreds of dollar bills tucked inside. In total, Kirby and his daughter pulled $43,000 $2,170 in cash out of the cushions. Kirby's lawyer told him that he had no obligation to return the money, but he still felt that it was his moral duty to contact the original owner. After calling the Habitat for Humanity store, he discovered that it had been donated by Kim Foth Newberry back in December. She'd only recently donated a couch from inheriting it from her grandfather after he passed away sometime last year. Not only was she shocked to learn of the money's existence, but she was even more stunned that Kirby would give her every dime. "It's just crazy," she told WNEM. "It's completely awesome." Kirby later told reporters that he could have used the money for a new roof of his home, but he was happier knowing that he did the right thing. "I always thought, what would I do if that ever happened to me? And now I know, and it makes me feel good." Of course it did. I looked into this a little more, and science actually supports the benefits of giving. For example, research by social psychologist Liz Dunn and her colleagues, appearing in the journal Science, shows that people's sense of happiness is greater when they spend relatively more on others than themselves. In one survey, over 600 U.S. citizens, Dunn and colleagues found, that were spending money on others predicted greater happiness, whereas spending money on oneself did not. And this pattern was focused on all income levels. In other words, even those with little money reported greater happiness when their proportion of spending on others relative to the self was greater. I've seen this in actually countless scientific journals, and a lot of evidence does suggest that this is in fact the case. Personally, now that I'm an adult, I've always found that giving is better than receiving. At Christmas, don't we always look forward to people opening the gifts that we've purchased for them rather than receiving them? So even though he might have benefited from the cash and it would have been great for him, his mind certainly benefited more from the giving. And I'm sure Kim was overjoyed to receive it. Yeah, so this generosity was over the charts for me. And I'd like to see more of that. When we return, a brewery puts local shelter dogs on beer cans to help them get adopted. So that's when we return from a break.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
The importance of giving. And now, we head to Bradentown, Florida, where Motorworks Brewery is helping shelter dogs get adopted by putting their face on beer cans. Let's hear about one of the lucky dogs. 2-year-old Candy, a German Shepherd and Mastiff mix of Manatee County Animal Services. She's smart and full of energy. She loves nothing more than playing in one of our yards with a ball. A shelter environment where she's in a kennel for most of the day is not good for a dog like that, says Hans Wolgefart, Manatee County Animal Service Outreach Event Specialist. Especially since Candy's been at this shelter since June. She's a sweetheart. She's looking for a home, and there's so many stories like that, says Barry Elouar, a Motorworks Brewing Director of Sales and Marketing. He says Motorworks Brewing in downtown Bradentown is featuring Candy and other adoptable dogs on their beer cans. I love this idea because the atmosphere of a get-together, having a couple of beers, talking, catching up with friends, getting to know how everyone's been doing is a great way of starting the conversation of potentially adding a new friend to the mix. Especially for people that maybe aren't ready for a family yet, or live alone, or don't have a partner, or aren't interested in having kids. Maybe they are interested in having a dog, so those people, well, they tend to, attend more parties and have a few more drinks. And I think like the idea of looking down at your beer and finding your new best friend is fantastic. To commemorate the first can run of our cruiser Golden Lager, we put 4 adoptable dogs onto the cans to raise awareness for shelter and money for the shelter as well, said Barry. Each can has a picture of the dog and says a little something about them. MCAS says the publicity is huge because right now they're at nearly twice their capacity. It's been a constant problem. Being the county's only adoption shelter, we take nearly 15 to 20 animals a day. Now, Barry says that's why all the proceeds are going to help build a new shelter. So far, 2 of the dogs on the cans, King and Morton, have been adopted, but many more, including Candy, are waiting to find their forever home. We just want to continue to raise awareness, as well as to find these dogs new homes. So, I love that not only are they trying to find them homes, and they're trying to use this publicity to build awareness about the dogs that potentially could be adopted, but they're also using all of the proceeds from this particular line to help build another shelter. Now, I don't know much about Motorworks Brewing. I'm not sure what their profit margins are like. I think it would be inappropriate of me to ask. But I do know that smaller businesses sometimes need the extra income. So this is a very, very selfless act. And I think it's really lovely of the brewers to be doing this sort of thing. Also, what a great way to get to know someone, like whenever I'm going out with like new friends for a good time, like we do end up like going for a drink to get to know each other. So like going for a drink is the way to find a friend, and who else to find a friend with but man's best friend, So the next time you're cracking open a cold one with friends or family and you see one of these sweet little puppy faces staring back at you, I hope that you'll consider them in finding them a new home. If you want to get a hand on one of these cans, they're available exclusively at Motorworks Brewing in a 4-pack or a case of 24. So that's where you would find them if you are interested, and I really hope that you are. When we return from the break, we're going to do another quick fire round of some of my favorite positive stories that have come out in the past few days. So get ready for that. That's happening when we return. Okay, see you soon.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
hope you thought about those adoptable dogs on the cans at Motorworks. And now we're going to do a little quick fire round of my favorite good news stories of the past few days. Number 1, Thailand helps sea turtles swim again with a prosthetic flipper. A Thai turtle, Goody, lost her flipper years ago after she was entangled in a fishing net, leaving her immobile and stressed out in captivity. But now, Goody, an endangered olive ridley sea turtle, can swim again with ease after receiving Thailand's first prosthetic flipper last week. She's swimming much better, and she's learning to use the 2 flippers in turn. You can see the difference. Says Nantikra Shanus, a veterinarian who took part in the development of Goody's prosthetic flipper. Over the past year, Thai environment authorities and researchers at the university in Bangkok have been working to develop prostheses for injured sea turtles following similar projects in Japan and, yes, the United States. Number 2, a 12-year-old Jackson Pollock has an art exhibit in Manhattan. So, cynics who have always said that abstract art, that a kid probably painted that, well, I guess you're finally right. Zio Chu is setting sales records with his colorful abstract paintings, which are selling for more than $150,000 US, being compared to works by renowned artist Jackson Pollock. The 7th grade student from Vietnam is hosting his first solo exhibition at the George Burgess Gallery in Manhattan's upscale Soho neighborhood. The exhibit, titled Big World, Little Eyes, which opened on Thursday and runs through to the 2nd, comes years after the artist, who started painting at age 4, made his first sale. One customer came through and bought my painting, and I was really happy. And that's when I was like 6. Yep, Chu said. How sweet. He first picked up a paintbrush after begging his mother, who owns an art gallery in Vietnam, to allow him to paint with his brothers. For the New York exhibition, he created an unnamed 15-foot-long 4-panel piece. My mom said I was going to have an exhibition in New York, and I said, okay, I'm going to make a big painting for us. That took like 3 months. I find that absolutely incredible, this young child painting these world-famous, very expensive pieces of art. Number 3, a girl earns her bravery award for saving her family from a van that plunged into the river. From Halifax, Nova Scotia, 6-year-old Sophia Grace LeBlanc in November and 2 of her siblings were in a van driven by their mother when the vehicle left the highway near Little River and plunged into the river, landing on its roof. Sophia's 2-year-old sister Elise and 4-year-old brother Ethan were trapped upside down in the vehicle. With her little brother unconscious and her mother badly injured, Sophia freed her sister from the seatbelt and helped her escape the van. She then climbed onto the embankment to flag down another motorist for help. The others were saved from the vehicle as well. On Wednesday, Sophia, who recently turned 8, became the youngest Nova Scotian to ever receive the Provincial Medal of Bravery. After the ceremony at the provincial legislature, Sophia was asked what she thought about receiving the award. "It's cool," she said. "I'm going to put it in my room where I can always see it." What a brave little girl. How impressive. Number 4, a hockey player paralyzed from the Broncos bus crash said he's thrilled with the progress that he's made since receiving spinal surgery in Thailand a month ago. Doctors implanted an epidural stimulator in his spine. 1 week later, injected stem cells to reverse some of the damage. The 20-year-old has just a week to go before returning to his home. It's been progressively getting better and harder at the same time, which is good. They put me through a good sweat, doing a couple of laps around the building. It's good work, he said in an interview with the Canadian Press. One video of his rehab shows him straightening a leg, another strapped into a harness as physiotherapists slowly work him to walk with the use of his wheeled machine. I was at a loss for words. I was really shocked and excited at the same time. kind of scared me a bit, but again, I was pretty excited. I don't remember being that tall. The U.S. film industry, number 5, the U.S. film industry may have generated revenues somewhere in the region of $40 billion last year, but it seems Hollywood still has plenty of work to do if it wants to compete with the most hallowed of American institutions, the public library. That's right. It turns out that, to a recent Gallup poll, visiting the local library remains by far the most common cultural activity in America that Americans engage in. Visiting the library remains the most common cultural activity by far. The average 10.5 trips to the library in U.S. reports exceeds the participation amongst any other leisure activity, including live music, theatrical events, visits to national or historic parks, etc., amusement parks, theme parks, things like that. The results of the Gallup poll have been broken down into a range of different ways, but all of which you can see if you would like to take a look. But the findings are that it turns out that more women than men visit the library almost twice as frequently, and that they're more visited by adults in low-income households than high-income. So congrats, librarians. So keep fighting that good fight. Very impressive and very nice to see that people are still interested in literature. Now, that is it for the day. There is beauty in America. Let's try harder to see it. Thank you for listening to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and please write us a nice review and rate the episode. That really, really helps us when we get upvotes. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast.